In another breaking news bombshell, Politico and CNN are reporting that Donald Trump has formally offered the position of Secretary of Health and Human Services to notorious anti-vaxxer Robert F. Kennedy Jr. mere weeks after the leader of the Trump transition team assured Americans that that would not happen. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we're going to have a shot chaser moment, okay? We're going to roll the clock back to October 30th, where the head of the Trump transition team confirmed to CNN, Caitlin Collins, that there's no way that Robert F. Kennedy Jr., notorious, controversial anti-vaxxer, would be given the position of Secretary of Health and Human Services.
Because
I spent 2.5 hours.
RFK Jr. is a vaccine skeptic. He pushes lies about vaccines, and I don't even think if Republicans.
Why do you think he pushes lies? Why you said you said I'm not a scientist and you aren't. So
but
he just wants
scientists
data.
say he pushes lies.
But scientists who are paid to say he pushes lies. I mean, let's give him the data. I think it'd be pretty cool to give him the data. Let's see what he comes up with.
Okay.
I think it's pretty fun.
He pushed conspiracies about COVID. He had to apologize for tying vaccine questions to what happened in Germany during the Holocaust.
I promise you, I have not looked at all the things he said.
That anyone's looking at for on
he
health.
said Roundup. Remember Roundup?
But you're saying he would not be in charge of HHS?
No, of course not.
Okay, so he's not going to be like
an acting. He's not going to be the secretary. No.
Well, he couldn't get confirmed, but would he be in an acting position or anything like that?
I just told you.
So that is. It's so funny how this stuff works. Again, the Trump transition co-chair, that's Howard Lutnick, confirming that Donald Trump is not going to be, that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is not going to be the secretary or the acting secretary of Health and Human Services. Caitlin Collins reposted this. He's not getting a job for HHS. He would not be in charge of HHS? No, of course not. Now Caitlin Collins is confirming Trump has formally offered Robert F. Kennedy Jr. the job as Health and Human Services Secretary, and the announcement could come as soon as today at Kirsten CNN confirming Politico. So let's look at the reporting. Trump picks Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to be his Secretary of Health of the Department of Health and Human Services. Trump has picked RFK Jr. to be his next Secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services. A source familiar with the moves told CNN, a choice that would add to Trump's list of provocative picks whose confirmation processes will test the loyalty of Senate Republicans. The source said Kennedy accepted the offer Thursday, and multiple sources told CNN that Trump could announce the choice later in the day. Kennedy has been in Palm Beach for several days following the election. Politico was the first to report the selection. The move is a notable one, given that only days before the election, Trump's transition co-chair, Howard Lutnick, told CNN that Kennedy was, quote, not getting a job for HHS. And again, we played the clip. That answer set off an internal uproar in Trump's orbit, with Trump making clear to Kennedy that he would make the ultimate decisions. Kennedy has been one of the nation's most prominent anti-vaccine conspiracy theorists for years and has frequently spread false conspiracy theories about the safety and efficacy of vaccines. He launched his own presidential bid last year, first as a Democratic challenger to President Biden, and then as an independent, focused largely on reversing the, quote, chronic disease epidemic. He proposed numerous policies aimed to overhaul food safety and environmental guidelines, promote holistic medicines, and restructure public funding for vaccine research. In the final days of Kennedy's campaign, he met with Trump on multiple occasions in which the two discussed the possibility of him endorsing Trump in exchange for a role in his administration. Kennedy suspended his campaign in August and endorsed Trump that same day. In October, Trump teased that Kennedy would oversee a public health portfolio while speaking at a rally in Madison Square Garden in New York City, telling the audience he would let Kennedy, quote, go wild on health, go wild on the food, and go wild on medicines if reelected. Since Election Day, Kennedy has pledged to take major steps to reshape the nation's public health guidelines. Last week, Kennedy said he would, quote, immediately begin studying vaccine safety and efficacy, but promised to not, quote, take vaccines away from anybody. He also publicly committed to formally recommending states and municipalities remove fluoride from public water. Kennedy has also floated significant employee turnover at public health agencies. He said in an interview with MSNBC that he would cut workers in, quote, the nutrition departments at the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. While speaking at a conference in Arizona on Saturday, Kennedy proposed replacing 600 officials at the National Institutes of Health with hand-picked staff. Yikes. In an interview with NPR News following the election, Kennedy laid out areas of focus in the Trump administration. Trump has given me 3 instructions. He wants the corruption and the conflicts out of the regulatory agencies. He wants to return the agencies to the gold standard, empirically based, evidence-based science and medicine that they were once famous for. And he wants to end the chronic disease epidemic with measurable impacts on a diminishment of chronic disease within 2 years. Whew. Now, before Politico and CNN, I think, broke the news, Carolyn Levitt, who is the Trump campaign's official spokesperson, she was asked about the prospect of RFK Jr. joining the Trump administration by Martha McCallum of Fox News. And this is what Carolyn Levitt had to say.
Let's move on to some of the others. HHS is one of the unfilled jobs. There was a lot of discussion about whether or not Bobby Kennedy Jr. might be considered for that spot. Is he still in the running? And does the president want to find a prominent place for him?
Certainly, President Trump wants to find a place for RFK Jr. He has made that very clear throughout the campaign. RFK Jr. is a once-in-a-generation thought leader. He's an independent mind, a critical thinker. We definitely need more of that in Washington, D.C. As for his specific position, I'll let President Trump announce that. But RFK Jr. will focus in the Trump administration on making America healthy again. That's another promise that President Trump made on the campaign trail. And with an appointment of RFK Jr. to whatever position President Trump decides, that promise will be delivered upon.
Wow. Yeah, so I've got another clip to play, but I just want to go into more details about some of the things that RFK Jr. has endorsed. So this is from the New York Times discussing this. Kennedy has spread false information about vaccines, including that they cause autism, a theory that has long been debunked. He's publicly contradicted, the CDC and the recommendations that communities fluoridate their water to guard against tooth decay. He's embraced raw milk despite the FDA's warning that drinking it is risky, particularly amid a current bird flu epidemic among dairy cows. And he's promoted hydroxychloroquine, a drug whose emergency authorization as a COVID-19 treatment was revoked by the FDA after a study of 821 people found it lacked effectiveness. So those are some things to consider. But I also want to play this 2-minute clip here regarding RFK Jr. contributing to an anti-vax conspiracy theory regarding measles. And coincidentally, perhaps, or consequently, there was a body count attached to the reduction in measles vaccines that RFK Jr. perpetuated this conspiracy theory. And as a consequence of people not getting the measles vaccine, there was a body count. So we're going to play this clip and unpack it together.
And to help put some of Mr. Kennedy's comments into context, we're joined by Dr. Paul Offit, who is a member of an FDA advisory committee on vaccines. He's also director of the Vaccine Education Center at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
So RFK Jr. is widely known as an anti-vaccine activist. He has a much larger platform now as he runs for president. He says that many of his views are misunderstood. They're taken out of context. Help us understand what he's been promoting and what the science tells us about it.
Well, he's been promoting false information about vaccines. He's been promoting the notion that vaccines cause autism, which is clearly not true, or cause a variety of other chronic diseases like diabetes or multiple sclerosis or attention deficit disorder, and that's all not true. So what he does is, by putting misinformation out there, he causes people to make bad decisions that put themselves and their family at risk.
You also point to one episode where he spoke out against the measles vaccine. What was the impact of that?
In Samoa, there were 2 children that died immediately following receipt of a measles vaccine. And the way it works in Samoa is they have a MMR vaccine in powdered form. It needs to be diluted in water. 2 nurses made a mistake. Instead of diluting it in water, they diluted it in a muscle relaxant. Those children stopped breathing and died immediately. Now, very quickly, within 2 weeks, it was realized what that mistake was. It was a nursing error. But nonetheless, RFK Jr. seized on that. He flooded Facebook with the information that measles vaccine is killing children in Samoa. He went to Samoa. He met with anti-vaccine activists. He met with senior officials in Samoa and kept the drumbeat alive that measles vaccine was killing children in Samoa. As a consequence, vaccination rates fell from 70% to 30%. And between September and December of 2019, there was a massive measles epidemic. In this island nation of 200,000 people, there were 57,000 cases of measles and 83 deaths. Most of those deaths were in children less than 4 years of age. And Robert F. Kennedy Jr. had everything to do with that. And that shows you how disinformation can kill.
So there you go, friends. That's who Donald Trump has nominated to be the Secretary of Health and Human Services. Just the latest in a long list of controversial, unqualified, incredibly offensive and dangerous selections to help run the country. And I'm sure there are more to come. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.